If you want to know how to pronounce the name of the capital city of Ukraine in English, it's Kyiv. There you go. I hope that was helpful. No, wait, don't go, there's more. Hi, I'm Dave Huxtable, and I'm a polyglot language coach and phonetician. I'm here today in this computer-generated wheat field, it's better for my allergies, to look at how to talk about Kyiv and Ukraine in a way that respects and gives moral support to the Ukrainian people. Lots of people seem to have convinced themselves that Ukrainians call their capital Keev, to rhyme with Steve, weave, leave, pet peeve, etc. They don't. That doesn't stop some people from getting quite worked up about it. Mike, the DM, the Canadian Captain America, says, "The capital of Ukraine is Kyiv. Kyiv, pronounced Keev, is the transliteration from Ukrainian. Kiev, pronounced Kiev, is the Russian transliteration. One small way to stand with the Ukrainian people. Try to stick with the first spelling and pronunciation." Yeah, but it's not Kyiv. And while we're at it, wouldn't the Canadian Captain America be called Captain Canada or Le Capitaine Canada? Mary Jo Woods, a US House candidate from Texas, proclaims, "It is Kyiv, not Kiev. Kyiv is from the Ukrainian language and Kiev is from the Russian language. Hashtag Kyiv Ukraine, Kyiv not Kiev." That got her a whole 35 likes and 8 retweets, and I hope that's not an indication of how her campaign is going. Sebastian XR, lover of knowledge, crypto and forex trader, drummer, public speaker, political enthusiast, gamer, gaming console emoji, doesn't get Miss Woods' point. He says, "Okay, your point?" I think, Sebastian, that her point is that people should say Kyiv instead of Kiev, and she's very well intentioned in that point, but sadly wrong. The basic premise is that we should use the Ukrainian name for the city rather than the Russian one, and that we should pronounce it how Ukrainians do. Now, I couldn't agree more. The problem comes when people start convincing themselves that Ukrainians say Kyiv, which they don't. Now, I must admit at this point that I don't speak Ukrainian and have never been to Ukraine. I can read phonetic transcriptions, though, and have a pretty good ear for pronunciation, which lets me analyse what people are saying when I listen to audio and video. In Ukrainian, Kyiv is spelt. The ka is used to represent the sound k, so far so easy. I is pronounced I, and the letter yi, which is pretty much unique to Ukrainian, where it represents the sound sequence yi, like the beginning of the English word yeast. So thus far we have ki, yi, definitely 2 syllables with a y in the middle. In most languages that use the Cyrillic alphabet, ve represents a V sound, but not in Ukrainian. Here, it represents a group of sounds more like the English W than V. For some speakers, it's a W sound using both lips. For others, it's V, which brings the bottom lip up near the top teeth without touching. This is like the W in Standard Dutch. De kwallen wachten in het water. It's also the sound used by people stigmatized as unable to say their R's. Round and round the rugged rocks, the ragged rascal ran. After vowels, this Ukrainian R sound shows up as a pretty short U. Putting all this together gives us Kyiv. So there you go. If you really want to say it like the Ukrainians, it's Kyiv. Which is all lovely, but if you do use it in an English sentence, people won't know what you're talking about. So that's why I suggest Kyiv as a happy medium. Not that everyone is happy, of course. The Gormagons tweeted, "CZ, I assume since it's the hipster thing to say Kyiv instead of Kiev, 1. It's not pronounced Kyiv, but Kyiv. You will also start saying Moskva, Warsaw, it's actually Warszava, and Roma, since English names of foreign cities are no longer cool. Dumbasses." I love the idea that some places have special hipster names. So we've got the city, Madtown, Beervana, A Squared, Berserkly, Foko, the Minneapolis, and Seatown as the most hipster cities in the US. And now Kyiv, who knew? If you know the hipster for London, Paris, Ouagadougou or Ulaanbaatar, do let me know in the comments. The Gormagons isn't, or is it aren't, alone in worrying that we'll soon have to call places what Johnny Foreigner calls them. None other than Winston Churchill clearly had a bee in his bonnet about this. In a memo to the Foreign Office on St. George's Day in 1945, he was affronted at the suggestion that Englishmen should call the capital of Turkey Ankara.
I do not consider that names that have been familiar for generations in England should be altered to study the whims of foreigners living in those parts. Constantinople should never be abandoned, though for stupid people Istanbul may be written in brackets after it. As for Angora, long familiar with us through the Angora cats, I will resist to the utmost of my power its degradation to Ankara.
Maybe if he hadn't been distracted by, winning World War II, we might never have lost the connection between Ankara and long-haired cats, which I must admit I was unaware of before I discovered this quote. The memo continues, outlining even direr consequences to ensue.
If we do not make a stand, we shall in a few weeks be asked to call Recon Livorno, and the BBC will be pronouncing Paris, Paris.
Sorry, Winnie, but you let us down on that one. No one calls Livorno Leghorn anymore. I don't really get why they ever did. Carruthers, ask that foreign chappie what this place is called. Yes, sir. Scuso, signoro. This place, what it called? Ciao. Come si chiama questa città? Livorno. What did he say? I don't know, sir. It sounded like Leghorn. Leghorn? What a funny name for a city. Churchill also wrote, criticising a friend for pronouncing French place names à la française. Marseille, Lyon and Calais instead of Marseilles, Lyons and Calais. I imagine the older English names for French places fell into disuse as travel increased. It's far from unusual, though, for place names to change when countries become independent. That's how Constantinople and Angora became Istanbul and Ankara, as Turks were now running their own country and got to decide what their cities were called. The collapse of the Soviet Union led to a whole series of changes. Byelorussia became Belarus, though sadly not much changed in its politics. In Kazakhstan, Alma-Ata became Almaty, and the capital Akmola became Astana in 1998, and Nur-Sultan in 2019. And the city known as Kiev in Soviet times officially changed to Kyiv in 1995. So we've had 27 years to get used to it and to pronounce it correctly. Thank you so much for watching. Дякую за перегляд і слава Україні!